welcome to another episode of Eric's Perspective. Joining me today is talented author, filmmaker, singer, songwriter, etc. There's a lot of labels we can attach. He's multi-talented, Renaissance man, Byron Motley. Byron, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Excellent, excellent. By the way, I should mention that he's joining us via video call. So he's in one place and I'm in another. Okay, so at any rate, Byron, I just wanted to start from the beginning. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Kansas City, Missouri.
Oh, okay.
And raised there for 20 years until I moved to Los Angeles. And so I grew up in the Midwest.
Oh, okay.
And that's where my parents were, and my sister still lives there. And that's a hometown of mine.
Excellent. So do you get a chance to go back there very often, or?
Not that often, now that my parents have gone, but I was there for like 6 months ago for the screening of the film, my documentary.
Ah, okay.
In Kansas City. So we had a nice showing there. And
excellent.
Yeah, so I get back there, occasionally.
Yes, and we should mention, since you brought up the film, it's called The League, right? Is that the one you're talking about?
The League.
Yeah.
Correct.
So we'll maybe talk about that a little bit later, but just so that the listeners and viewers understand what you were talking about. It's called The League. Very well done and worth your time to look at, by the way, all you guys out there. So anyway, so Byron, how did you become interested in music?
Oh, in music. Because my mother played the piano.
Ah, okay.
So there was music in the house every night. She would play the piano. Mm-hmm. And or the organ, and so I grew up hearing those sounds.
Ah, okay.
And my father asked every night, he said, "You guys go sing something. I'm going to go to bed. Go in there and sing something.
Oh, really?
Play some music while I go to bed." Yeah, this is every night almost.
So you had a lot of practice,
she and
right?
Yeah, so she and my sister would go and start singing and playing, and that's how music was really introduced to me through my mother.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So do you play the piano, by the way?
Not very well.
Oh, okay. You're primarily singing.
I do, but I'm not. Yes. I play piano a little bit, not great. Okay. I can write songs or do what I need to do.
Sure.
I know my own chords.
Ah, okay.
I never really could play and read at the same time. I just was not my forte.
Ah, okay.
But I just always loved the sound of music and certain songs. And so my mother is the cause of me really getting involved in having a musical career.
That's fantastic. So at what point did you have that kind of, like, they might want to say, a breakout point? Because, by the way, the listeners and viewers should know that you've performed with some really top names. Am I right in saying Dionne Warwick, for example, and some of the others?
Yeah. Barry Manilow. Patti LuPone, a bunch of folks.
Yeah.
Celine Dion.
Ah, okay.
John Legend.
Yeah.
So a few folks, but I think my career, my love for music really began, from my mother playing, obviously. But I was working at a theater in Kansas City from the time I was 12 or 13, as an usher.
Oh.
And so all of these different acts would come in during the summer and play for for it seemed like months, 3 or 4 months. I can't even think of all these people that played, but old time artists. But the one who really impacted my life, changed my life completely musically, was when Dionne Warwick came and performed.
Okay.
And she was the one person I didn't care anything about her music. I said, that old woman's coming to sing. Why is she coming here? No, I'm like, I was 12 or 13, and she was only like 20 something, but I thought she was an old woman.
Right.
And I was like, why is that old woman? Why can't they get Diana Ross or something like that to come? And Miss Warwick comes, and I remember sitting on the bench, the park bench where I had to man the little area I was working in. And I thought, oh God, this is going to be a boring 2 weeks of this woman's concerts. 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay.
I thought, I'll never make it through it.
Yeah.
And my parents had season tickets to the Royals baseball games.
Okay.
So we went to every home game.
Okay.
So the first thing I did when I saw the Dionne Warwick, I'm not working that week. I'm going to take the week off. and I looked and saw the Royals were out of town.
Ah.
So I had no choice but to work in the theater that night.
Okay.
And this goddess walks out on the stage, and I'd never seen anybody own a stage the way that women did.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God. Yeah. It was life-changing.
Oh, wow.
And then she opened her mouth up and started singing.
Yeah.
And then all those songs I've been hearing since I was like a little kid.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, this is incredible.
Wow.
And I thought this is it. Oh. This is nothing gets better than this. Oh. And for me, that was a life-changing experience.
Oh, that's awesome.
Seeing her and watching her for those complete 2 weeks every night.
Every night.
I couldn't wait to get to work to watch and hear her flipped around completely.
That's awesome.
Completely. And I became her, I think, the biggest fan she ever had.
Did you interact with her at all? I mean, after the
yeah, absolutely. I finally got backstage and had my father say, I got to get backstage and meet her. He said, I'll come to work. I'll get you backstage somehow. And he came to the theater, and a friend of his was working there. Uh-huh. And he got me backstage and introduced us, and we've been friends ever since.
Oh my goodness, that's so awesome.
She's became my mentor from that point on.
Oh, that's amazing. I love it.
It's amazing, isn't it?
That's a great story. Yeah,
it really is.
And it's a tribute to her too, right? I mean,
absolutely. Wow. Yeah. I was gonna say that's kind of like my musical story.
Oh, okay.
About how it all began.
Oh, okay.
For me musically.
Yeah.
You're gonna ask if I had any other what?
Yeah, any other influences with the music?
Barry Manilow was a big influence growing up because his songs were always on the radio, and so I would loved his music. And a little black boy like me loving Barry Manilow, people thought I was crazy. Why did you like Barry Manilow? But I loved when he sang "I Write the Songs." I remember distinctly. The first time I heard that song, my father was driving, my mother's in the front seat, I'm in the back seat, and I heard this dun 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 dun, the intro for the song.
Okay.
And it was so powerful and so strong. I started screaming, pull over, pull the car over right now. My father he was worried because I said, what's wrong with me?
Something's wrong.
Something's wrong. And I said, turn that up. And so he's like, what is wrong with this kid? And I had to hear that song. I said, I have to hear this. Ah. And that song for me was the most incredible thing I've ever heard.
Wow.
And of course I became a huge Manilow fan. And then lo and behold, maybe 20 years later, I'm on the road with him, singing backup for him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That must have been a huge honor for you. I mean, that sounds so wonderful.
Unbelievable. For 10 years, I don't know, it was a dream come true. Yeah. And then he had worked with and produced Dionne Warwick, and so it had all this
interconnectivity.
Interconnectivity. Yeah. Same thing with Mike Stoller, who's a dear friend of mine. He and his wife Corky.
Yes.
I called them my mom and dad, actually.
Yes.
And I met Corky initially, and then she said, I'm married to songwriter. Somebody might not know Mike Stoller. I said, I know who Mike Stoller is. And I knew his name because I knew that he had kind of helped discover Dionne Warwick.
Ah, okay.
He was there. He was the one who introduced Dionne to Burt Bacharach and Hal David.
Oh, no way.
So all that my life kind of came together musically through those people.
Okay, sorry. I was just going to say that to the audience that Mike Stoller was probably one of his most famous songs is "Stand By Me," and he did many others too. That was recorded by Elvis and others, right?
Yeah. And Kansas City, he wrote, my hometown.
He wrote Kansas City,
yeah, Kansas City. Yeah. So I grew up knowing that song since I was
Yeah, cool. She's an accomplished musician herself, harp and piano, right? Oh my God! I've seen photographs of her with Billie Holiday, for example.
She was Billie Holiday's last pianist.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. Incredible. So that's my other mom and dad.
Well, you're very fortunate to have all these wonderful folks, very talented as mentors and people to look up to. And it sounds wonderful for them to open themselves up to you and help you in that respect. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah.
You have just one sibling, is that right? Just your sister?
One sister.
Okay.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm just curious, is she musically inclined too, or no?
No, but she could have been. I mean, she played piano a lot better than I did.
Oh, okay.
She played piano very well. And she has a nice voice, but she never had the drive or the energy or she wasn't interested in the music industry or anything like that. Probably wisely.
Right. Right. It's a tough industry, right?
Right. Yeah. And but she's very talented. She's very talented.
Excellent.
Yeah, very talented. And she's a great artist also. Great painter.
Oh, no way.
She does beautiful artwork.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Is it paintings or drawings or both or?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. She's very talented.
Excellent.
In that regard. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Much because I can't even draw a stick man. I'm terrible at artwork, trying to draw something. But she got that talent, and I really got the music talent. So.
Yes, and you not only got the music talent, but you're a filmmaker. You did the documentary you just alluded to earlier called The League. Mm-hmm. So. Please tell us about your dad. I mean, am I right? He was an umpire for the Negro Baseball League?
Yeah. He was the last living umpire from the Negro Baseball Leagues.
Okay.
My father's name is Bob Motley.
Bob Motley.
He passed away, I guess 5-6 years ago now.
Okay.
Kind of lose track of time. I think I purposely lose track of time when it comes to things like that. But he was in the Negro Leagues, umpired there for about 11 years.
11 years?
Yeah, and ended up becoming a chief umpire in the Negro Leagues. And he umpired great games with these incredible players like Satchel Paige and so many. Let's use Satchel.
I was going to say this. The artist is Kenya White. He did this wonderful watercolor portrait of Satchel Paige. Very very
I
powerful.
Love that. Yeah. With Satchel Paige, Buck O'Neill, so many great players that he was around.
Ah, okay.
And so.
By the way, Buck O'Neill is in the other piece right directly behind me that Michael Massenberg did. It's not as obvious as the Satchel Paige, but he's represented on the wall.
Yeah.
So
did you represent Buck? He's a great guy.
Yeah. So did your dad ever play, or was he only the umpire?
He tried to play. He went and tried out for a team when he was living in Dayton, Ohio.
Okay.
And he went to try out for the team, and he was so bad that the manager of the team ran him off the ran him off the field.
Ran him off the field. Just chased him out of there.
Just say, my father was like, I can pitch, and say, well, come on, pitch a game for us, and you'll see what you got. He said everything you threw up to the home plate was a home run. They hit ball after ball. Kept knocking.
That's bad.
And the manager came running out. I thought you said you could pitch. Because back in those days, if you said you could do something, they just put you on the field and have you
give you a shot.
Try it out in front of the fans and everything.
Oh, really? In front of the fans?
This is the actual game that happened.
Oh, okay.
But he said probably 30,000 people, and he exaggerated a little bit. I'm sure there weren't 30,000 people in the stands, but probably a good 2,000 or 3,000 people were at the game.
Sure.
And he got run out of the ballpark. But he loved the game of baseball so much that he was determined to have a career doing something in the game. He said, well, maybe I can't be a player, but he was in World War II and got injured. He was one of the first Black Marines in our country. They call it the Montfort Point Marines.
Montfort Point Marines.
And Montfort Point Marines. And got the Congressional Gold Medal of Honor back in 2000, I think 2012.
Oh, that's very impressive.
Those who were still living. Only about 400 were left at the time.
Right.
And he was one of those 400 and got the Congressional Gold Medal of Honors by Barack Obama at that time. And so
was he in the Pacific Theater or in the Germany, Europe?
Yeah, Pacific Theater.
Pacific Theater.
Yeah.
Okay.
Saipan, Tinian, Guam, and Okinawa. He would always say.
Oh, okay.
I was in Saipan, Tinian, Guam, and Okinawa.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was in the South Pacific, and he got shot, as he would say, he got shot up and injured.
Oh.
He always said, I got shot up. I got shot up in the toe.
Oh, no.
And he got injured.
Uh-huh.
And so he was at they put him in the hospital. And he said from his room, he could hear the guys who were also, who had been injured, out playing a baseball game.
Oh.
And so he said he hobbled down with his little cane, hobbled down to where they were playing this baseball game just to be nosy.
Yeah.
And these are all guys who were in the war, that his fellow cadets and officers. And he said that they said, hey, we need an ump. Since you can't run or anything, can you umpire the game for us? He says, sure. I've always done that. Bob Motley would always say he's done everything.
Even if he hadn't.
Even if he hadn't. And he umpired. That was his first start of umpiring a baseball game.
Oh, no way.
He liked it.
Yeah.
He liked it, and he thought, this is how I can be a part of the game. And then he liked it when he learned more that the umpire really controls the game. That's when he really fell in love with it.
So was he behind the plate or all over the place like most of them are, I guess?
All over the place.
Okay.
All over the place. But he started off in the Negro League. He started off being the third base umpire.
Okay.
And then as he worked himself up, he went around and finally he said, when he got to be the home plate umpire, he said there's no turning back. He was not going to, from then on, he was the home plate umpire. Because they were the ones who really controlled the game.
Sure.
And and most people don't realize, even to this day, if you watch a baseball game or anything, you don't realize that the umpires are the people that run the game.
Yeah.
And he loved that. And he would throw players out of the game, in the Negro Leagues. He said he would actually, he would tell the manager, he'd tell him, get all when the team was batting, if he's having problems with some of the players, he'd tell the manager, put every single one of these players in the locker room. I don't want to see another face. If you go as you get them one by one, like they have to come to bat.
Okay.
And so he was a badass.
Sounds like
he was a badass.
You don't
he
mess
was
around.
a badass.
And
he didn't mess around.
Yeah, yeah. And you're wearing a shirt that says "You're out." Was he kind of famous for his gestures, calling somebody out?
Absolutely.
Who's the artist on that, by the way?
I'm not sure. It's a guy. This guy, he lives in Philadelphia. I can't think of his name, but he lives in Philadelphia.
I was just curious because we saw it online too as a painting, and we were curious about it.
But yeah, he was a badass. He didn't mess around. He didn't, because he knew that, being a former Marine, being such a badass there.
Right.
When he got to the Negro Leagues, he thought, these guys don't know who I am and what I can do.
Oh, okay.
So he had, got into fights and arguments, and he would be ready to fight anybody who had to challenge him.
No kidding. So did he ever actually exchange blows with anybody?
He almost did. One player, they were on a bus with the Monarchs, Kansas City Monarchs.
Okay.
It's a great story. So my dad always sat in the back of the bus. He said, I always sat in the back of the bus. He said, no matter how far we had to go, I sat in the back of the bus and always kept my face mask near me or in my hand. So if I fell asleep, I'd have my face mask somewhere because you never know what those players are going to do.
Oh, really? Okay.
And he said, so I had my face mask ready to pop somebody's skull off if I needed to.
Okay.
He said, so they were just finished a game somewhere, who God knows where. And they're in the bus. And one night they were going through some dark area, down some freeway, some highway. And back then there was not like the freeways there are now. So it's all dark. Okay. And he said, this player named, what's his name? I forget his name. Oh God, I can't remember the player's name. Anyway, the player was mad at him because my father threw him out of the game. At the game at Hank Bayless was his name. Hank Bayless was the player's name. Okay. Hank Bayless was upset because my father threw him out of the game. Okay. So Hank Bayless waited until the bus got into the dark area and came out to my father with my father's a big butcher knife. It's a
Butcher knife.
big old butcher knife. Butcher knife.
Whoa. He
And
was serious.
oh yeah, he's gonna kill him.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Wow.
And my father said they had my face mask, so he said we started fighting. He's trying to knife me, and I'm throwing my face mask at him. He said Buck O'Neill. Speaking of Buck, he said Buck O'Neill was the manager.
Uh-huh.
He said Buck O'Neill saved my life or
Saved
Hank Bayless's life.
Yeah.
That night, and came up and broke up the fight.
Okay.
And he's got really in Hank Bayless because he said, "What is wrong with you? You know, you're trying to kill this umpire. If you harm this umpire, you know, you can go to jail and you'll never play another baseball game in your life. What's wrong with you?"
Mm-hmm.
And he basically broke up the fight and basically saved my father and Hank Bayless's life that night.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So it was things like that. And my father also said, you know, when he was umpiring a game, that the fans were even worse than the players.
Oh, really?
The fans, he said they were, the women, he said the women did not mess around when it came to their baseball game and their players.
And they
he said
yelling
they
at the umps.
he said they would try to kill you.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, at the umpires.
That's seriously rooting for your
serious. It's serious. So it was a different world back in the Negro Leagues in a wonderful way, wonderful and fun way.
Right.
But they love their games and love their players. Yeah. So many great stories.
Excellent. Did he ever ump a game with Satchel Paige playing?
Oh, many.
Did he? Okay. That must have been interesting.
Many. Yeah. Yeah. He said Satchel was a heck of a ball player. He said he was definitely the best pitcher he had ever saw.
Yeah.
He said many times when Satchel threw so hard that when the catcher caught the ball, he would he's like, ugh, because it hit his hand so hard.
Yeah, yeah.
It'd be so painful. And back then, before the gloves, they had gloves like they have nowadays. Right. He said, so those pitchers were really fast. He said, could have been, well over 100 miles an hour at that time.
Lord. Wow.
They didn't have the
guns, the radar
they
guns.
have now. Yeah, like they have nowadays. He said, but it was really something. He said, and many times the catcher would catch the ball and fall back into my father. If he was, played umpire, he would fall back into my father because, he was...
From the force of the pitch?
The ball was the force of the pitch.
Wow.
He said, and the ball would come to the plate. Yeah, he said, it would come up to the plate and it would dip down that way or dip down. He said, you never knew which way the ball was going to go when Satchel was throwing. He said, you never knew.
It must have been hell to try to hit that.
Yeah, he said, so you had to keep your eye on the ball. He said, you had to keep, because you never knew what Satchel was going to throw up there.
Wow, that's incredible.
He said, don't have Satchel throw something, and I call it a ball, and Satchel thought it was a strike.
Oh, really? What would he do?
Oh, yeah.
He would shout it out?
He walked down toward the place. Did you miss one ump? And my father said, no, I ain't missed, take his face mask off. No, I ain't missed nothing. Now you get back up to the mountain, you pitch the game. I'm calling the balls and strikes down here. So it was that kind of
back and forth.
back and forth. And he said, but Satchel, Satchel thought that everything he threw was a strike. He said most times it was.
Right. But occasionally.
But sometimes, occasionally not. He didn't like me having you called a ball on him. Wow. He said, so they have their uns and off, but he was a great pitcher.
Wow.
The best of all time.
Yeah. By
far.
And so did your dad, when the Negro Leagues disbanded, basically, right? Because once integration occurred, it had a detrimental effect on the Negro Leagues. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So once they were over, did he umpire in the major leagues or any other league?
No, he tried for years. He went to the Pacific Coast League, the third one tier below the majors.
Okay.
The Pacific Coast League.
Okay.
So he was there for about 2 years.
Oh, okay.
And he really enjoyed it, but he wasn't making a lot of money. He wanted to make. He said, I got to raise money for my family.
Yeah, yeah.
No, by this time I'm born.
Okay. And
my sister is 7 years older than me.
Okay.
And my mother's probably giving him grief, like, we need more money. And you want to be out playing these baseball games, umpiring these baseball. We need some money.
Yeah.
And so he finally left umpiring at I guess in 19, really from the Pacific Coast League in 1961.
Oh, okay.
He was there. So he was like really at the edge of the majors.
Oh, okay.
And they weren't having any, there was the first black umpire who they actually put into the majors was his friend Emmett Ashford.
Mm-hmm.
And Emmett Ashford was about probably, maybe 15 years older than my father,
Mm-hmm.
and had been around and in the game longer, and in the Pacific Coast Leagues much longer than my father. So he was the first to go into the majors in 1966 or 1965, I think.
Okay.
So a few years after my father. And then Emmett tried to get my father into the majors, but they had one black umpire, and that's all they felt like they needed at that time.
Right.
And so my father tried and tried and tried for years to get to the majors, but and not successful at doing it. But when there was a big umpire strike back in the 70s, I think I maybe been 10 or 11. My father got a phone call from the major leagues when the umpires went into a strike.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we need umpires. Will you come and umpire some games for us? Because they knew who he was and what he had done. And he says, no, I'm not going to cross the picket line. Oh. I'm not doing that. I said, no.
Oh, that's admirable. He stuck to his principles. Yeah,
he said, you're going to make what about after after you get these guys back? Because you're going to toss me aside and not recognize what I'm giving. So no, I'm not.
Oh, good for him.
I'm not going to cross the picket line without these guys getting their just due.
Sure.
And so he never got to the majors, but he should have been because he was a heck of an umpire. And I saw him umpiring when I was a kid in the local, it's called the Ban Johnson League. Watching him umpire, and he was phenomenal.
Was that part of the Negro Baseball League, or that was something separate?
No, that's like a small local teams, mostly high school age students, some college students. But no, it's not a part of it's like just a local league.
And when did the Negro League stop?
The Negro League ended in 1960. 1960, yeah. So they had a good 40-year career in the Negro Leagues. It started in 1920 and ended in 1960. So a good 40 years of some fantastic baseball.
Yeah.
Fantastic, yeah.
And Jackie Robinson was part of the Negro League. Willie Mays,
he
right?
Was.
Some of the players we know a lot about started in the Negro League.
Yeah. My father umpired a game with Willie Mays playing and his father.
And Willie Mays' father?
Who
really?
They say was as good, if not better than Willie, believe it or not. No
way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Every time I think of him, I think about that overhead catch he made, that famous catch.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, Willie Mays is great. And I interviewed him for the documentary several years ago in San Diego. And what a lovely man. And great stories. And he's still living.
He's still living.
He's not doing so well, but he's hanging on. He's trying to stay well and healthy until they're having a big event honoring the Negro Leagues in the majors in June. I think June 20th, 21st.
Okay.
Down in Birmingham, Alabama, where he grew up.
Oh, okay.
Where Willie's from.
He's from there.
Yeah, and he played with the Birmingham Black Barons. He and his father played with that team. And so he's hoping to stay alive so he can be at that game.
Oh, I hope so too. My fingers are crossed.
Yeah, I hope so too. Because he's a great man.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So now that you brought it up, please tell us a little bit about the league. What prompted you to put that together, and eventually let the audience know how they can see it or where they can view it.
Yeah. Well, it started, 24 years ago.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I've been working on that project a long time.
Oh, wow.
A labor of love, as they say. I was watching the Ken Burns piece on baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was in New York. I was doing a show on Broadway, and on my off day, I just happened to be watching this TV show, and Ken Burns had done on baseball,
Mm-hmm.
and he did 1 hour of this 18-part series documentary. He did 1 hour based on the Negro Leagues.
Oh.
And I remember sitting there watching that going, wow, this is really great. I
Yeah.
said, but these are not the stories I heard growing up as a kid. I said, there's so much more to the story.
Yeah, yeah.
Why would he only do 1 hour
Right.
based on the Negro Leagues?
Uh-huh.
So I was having dinner with a friend of mine a couple of nights later, and it kept coming up in my mind because it bothered me.
Sure.
And I said, Gene, I don't understand why they would do this movie. And I told him about my father's stories, and he's laughing, and he understood the story, and he was a producer himself. Had worked on some other projects himself.
Mm-hmm.
And finally I said, what you should think about doing something about the Negro Leagues. And he says, oh, I'm not the person to do this. He says, you are. And I fell out laughing. I almost fell on the floor. I was laughing so hard. I said, this man is insane.
Right.
I said, Gene, I don't know the first thing about making films. I don't care about it. I don't like that many films. No, I'm not. And a documentary? No.
Yeah.
And so I kept calling him.
Uh-huh.
I got back to LA and I kept calling him and said, have you started thinking about something about the Negro Leagues? He says, I'm telling you, I'm not the person to do this. You are. And so this went on for 2 years.
Okay.
For that conversation went on for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so finally one night I'm watching old TV shows I used to love to watch. And I thought, I can do this. I think I can do something on this Negro League project.
Yeah, yeah.
It's in my mind. I said, I can do this. So I called my friend Jane, and it's like 12:30 at night in New York. She's like, I'm in bed. Call me tomorrow. I'll tell you how to get started. So I called him the next day, and I said, hey, I think I'm ready to do this.
Ah.
And that started the process. My friend Gene Davis, who's also a friend of Corky and Mike's.
Okay.
I met him through Corky and Mike.
Them? Okay.
And through them. And and so I started working on the progress of trying to make this documentary happen 24 years ago.
Wow.
And I started interviewing, raised a little money,
Mm-hmm.
and started interviewing, my father and Buck O'Neill and some of the other players that were living in Kansas City at the time.
Okay.
Who had played with the Monarchs. And eventually I interviewed Rachel Robinson, Jackie's widow, Maya Angelou.
Really? Why Maya Angelou? Was she connected some way with the league, or?
No, I just knew that I had been a fan of hers for so many years, since I was in high school and college. And I just knew her life and just knew, I said, she's got to know something about the Negro Leagues. This woman has got to know something about the Negro Leagues.
Okay.
And I thought, I've got to get to her somehow. And my father had an operation, and I was in the hospital. I was back in Kansas City,
Mm-hmm.
helping out him and my mother. And the phone rings one evening, and a friend of my sister's called, her husband called,
Mm-hmm.
and wanted to talk to my dad. And I said, well, he's not here right now. He's in the hospital. I said, well, this is his son, Byron. I'd never met this guy before. I knew his name,
Mm-hmm.
but I said, no, I knew his wife better than I knew him. I said, is there something I can help you with? He says, oh yeah, we wanted to, he says, I'm from South Carolina, and they want to do a tribute to your father in South Carolina.
Okay.
And I said, oh, really? And he said, yeah. I said, well, would you happen to know Maya Angelou? Since you're from there originally? He says, no, I don't know her. He says, but I have people who I know that do know her and work with her.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'll make you a deal. I said, I will talk to my father about doing this event for you if you can get me an interview with Maya Angelou.
Ah.
And he says, I'll check on that and call you back.
Okay.
And I said, okay. I said, you get that?
We're good.
You get my father. And he calls back. And he says,
and he arranged it.
He arranged it. He says, call Miss, Maya Angelou called everybody Miss so and so, like Miss Phoebe, Miss so and so. You were always Miss. You weren't either Miss or Mrs.
I see.
She never called you by your first name.
I
You
see.
were Mister, Mister. You know, Mister. You were Mister or Mrs. She always did that.
Okay.
And yeah, so he got the interview, and so my father went to almost said the name of the city. Went there. He and I both went together, and he got the tribute to him and did all that. And then like the next month, I was at Dr. Maya Angelou's house interviewing her.
Oh wow!
It was incredible.
That must have been a real thrill for one thing. I mean, she's the great Maya Angelou.
Oh my God! It was unbelievable. It was beyond unbelievable. I mean, here I am with Maya Angelou in her house,
right?
Interviewing her for 3 hours.
3 hours you were there.
3 hours.
So, what did you get from that, by the way? So, was she?
Oh, I got so much from it. I couldn't even take it all in.
Oh wow!
I was just so in the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time of the interview, it was a perfect interview. I mean, she sang and she would laugh, and she was Maya Angelou.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the first you're gonna get a kick out of this.
Okay.
The first thing I did when I went into her house, the first thing I kept thinking, oh, I wonder if the Phoebes are in here. If I see any Phoebes on the wall.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I knew that she collected.
She collaborated with.
Yeah. I knew that from the time I was, I think, in high school.
Okay.
I saw Maya Angelou on TV once, and I remember her talking about the Phoebes.
Okay.
What's the Phoebes?
Right.
What is? And I realized it was the work of Phoebe Beasley. So you walk into her living room, and that's the first thing you see on the wall are 3 beautiful drawings by Phoebe Beasley. And I said, oh my God, those were the Phoebes. I was just over the moon.
That's awesome.
And then after the interview, she was having breathing problems at the time. So it was during the time she was, I forget, was the emphysema I think she had or something.
Okay.
Yeah. So she had troubles breathing. But she, after the interview, her assistant came over and says, Dr. Angelou would like for you to come into the kitchen and have some coffee with her.
Oh.
Oh,
wow.
Okay. Okay. So she and I are sitting in her kitchen table.
That's awesome.
After the interview, just having coffee,
just kind of relaxing,
relaxing, and she told me, you got to go outside and see my collection of. She had this beautiful collection of statues in her basement, not basement, but outside in the yard.
Okay.
And she was so proud of those statues she had, and she, you got to go out and take. Go and see that. Took my camera with me, of course, and yeah, that was just amazing to be in her presence like that.
Sure.
And
is that in the documentary, by the way?
No. Well, she isn't. Yeah, she starts the documentary off. Matter of fact, she says something during the interview, the length of the interview, and almost fell off the chair because she says. Because I asked her about, growing up, does she know anything about the Negro League? She says, I didn't know much about it. She says, but we all knew about the leagues because everybody always referred to them as everybody talked about the Negro Leagues as the league. Mm-hmm. Hey, did you hear about the league? Did you hear about what happened in the league? Oh. So that starts the documentary.
Ah, and that hence the title of the documentary as well, right?
That hence is the title. Is she had not said the league, the documentary would have been entitled something else. Oh wow! She actually said the league, and I was like, oh,
that's it.
I'd never heard anybody. I had interviewed 100 people.
Yeah. And
nobody had ever told me that they called it just the league. And that's what became the title of the documentary. Yeah.
That's totally cool.
Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou of all people.
That's totally cool. I love it.
Yeah. So speaking of Phoebe, so I didn't meet Phoebe until after interviewing Maya Angelou at her house.
Okay.
So when I saw Phoebe at this event, I went over to her and I introduced myself, and she looked at me like, "Who are you?" And I said, "I have something to show you." And I took my camera out of my phone out of my pocket, and I showed her the picture of her Phoebe's at Maya's house,
Okay.
Dr. Angelou's house. I'm sorry.
Of course.
And she's like, "That's Maya's house. What are you doing at Maya's house?"
That's cool. I can hear her saying that too.
Right. So I was in her house because I was having coffee with her and
deal with it, right?
Right. So, well, who are you?
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's become a long lifetime friendship with her now. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
As a matter of fact, if you don't mind me saying, you have 2 dogs, and one is named
Phoebe,
and the other one?
And Beasley.
Love
Beasley.
That's totally awesome. She loves it too, I'm pretty sure, right?
She loves it. She tells everybody, "Here's Byron and Jeff. They named their 2 dogs after me, Phoebe and Beasley."
I love it. That's fantastic.
But yeah, she loves that. Yeah.
Aside from Maya, in the documentary itself, are there any other interviews that stand out as like particularly, revelatory, like you didn't know that before, or this was like something, oh my gosh, this is incredible? Did you have any of those moments?
I think all the interviews I did were like that.
Oh, okay.
Because I learned so much by interviewing these men and women who were part of the leagues.
What were the women doing, by the way?
The women were playing. There were 3 women that played in the Negro Leagues. Toni Stone.
With the men? Wow.
Alongside the men, yeah.
I did not know
Toni Stone, Connie Morgan, and maybe Peanut Johnson.
No kidding.
They were the Jackie Robinsons for women in baseball, basically.
That's incredible.
Yeah. They played just a short amount of time after the Negro Leagues started to disband in the 1950s.
I see.
But they played for 3 or 4 years and held their own.
Okay.
They were pretty good athletes. They were decent. They had to be to play alongside those men.
Sure.
And some of the players say, "Oh, they were kind of used as a gimmick. They tracked. They were just kind of used as a gimmick." And maybe they were. To some degree. But they could throw and hit that ball.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. My father said, they didn't hit with a lot of power.
Mm-hmm.
He says, but they could hit the ball and run.
They could place it necessarily.
Play a position and strike you out.
Oh,
He said, "I saw it many a time that maybe Peanut Johnson would strike somebody out."
Wow.
And the player would be like, he'd be mad. Pissed. But a woman struck me out. So
he's got to face his teammates and his friends.
Yep.
And you let a woman.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. So stories like that were just incredible. And then there were so many great interviews. Interviewing Hank Aaron.
Oh, wow. Because he played in the Negro League, right? I don't think a lot of people know that.
Yes, he did. Yeah, he did. Yeah. And we were at an event in Kansas City, and my father told me that Hank Aaron was going to be there. Mm-hmm. And I remember he didn't tell me until we were in the car driving there. And I remember thinking, okay, I've got to talk to Hank Aaron and get an interview with him, because I've been trying to get an interview with him forever. I said, I've got to get it. I just kept telling myself, you got to get this interview. So we get to the event, sit at the table, my mother, my father, me, my partner, and the rest of the tables there were like 8 chairs around this table, were empty. Mm-hmm. Lo and behold, who comes and sits right next to my partner? So I'm sitting here, and then my partner, and then Hank Aaron sits down.
Hank Aaron sits down.
Hank Aaron sits down. He says, "Anybody sitting here?" And my partner's like, "No." And I immediately said, "Change seats with me right now." I said, "Don't ask me, because you're changing
Don't
seats
even think
with
twice
me."
about
it. Get over here. Exchange seats. And so we start chatting, Hank and I. And then I said to him, because everybody was getting there is like a breakfast meeting, so everybody was getting their breakfast. I said, "You haven't eaten anything yet?" He says, "No." I said, "Are you hungry?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "I'll go get your food." Of course, so I I go get him a plate of food, like bring it back. And so he and I start chit-chatting and even more. And then I, basically told him, I said, I'm working on this documentary about the Negro Leagues, blah, 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 blah. And I said, would love to interview you. And I said, I'll come to, I know you're in Atlanta. I'll come there. I said, or we can do it here today.
Yeah.
I can get a camera wherever. I said, but as long as I can do an interview with you. He said, here, take this number. He says, call my assistant and set it up.
Wow. Like that. That's awesome.
Like that.
And it wasn't anything prearranged, right? You didn't know necessarily he would have been at that event, right? Was that the case?
No, I didn't know he was going to be there.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew. I think my father told me when we were going to it. And I'd flown in from I think, he might be there. I think I'd flown in from L.A. because it's a big Negro League event. So I went to all those events at that time.
Oh, okay.
While there were players still around, I never knew who was going to interview for the project.
Okay.
And but yeah, he's like, yeah, this come to, whenever you want to come down, come on, come tomorrow. He said, come tomorrow if you want to. Like, no, I can't come tomorrow, but
wow.
yeah,
like that.
Yeah,
that's
so
awesome.
I flew down and yeah, we did it. He was wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. Yes, I had a lot of great connections with these players, and they were like family to me. A lot of them. Double Duty Radcliffe, who played in the Negro Leagues. He's not a well-known figure, but he would always say, Motley, little Motley, you my man. You my man, little Motley. You come to Chicago, don't you get no hotel. You stay at my place. You stay with me. You ain't got to pay no money for no hotel. You stay with me.
I love it.
I never did that, but yeah, those kind of relations, very generous. And those kind of relationships were amazing with those men and those women that I met through the years.
So
really
if anybody
incredible.
wanted to watch the documentary, how do they do that?
It's streaming pretty much everywhere on Hulu and Amazon. I think it's on so many different platforms now. I'm like, oh God, so many platforms. I don't even know half the platforms.
Oh, okay.
But it
is widely available.
Widely available. Yeah. It was screening. It was it was doing it was a theatrical release for the first 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
But now it's streaming pretty much everywhere.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, you not only did the documentary, but you, with your father, also wrote this book. I'm going to hold it up here.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm just going to read the quote at the top. An important step in revealing what has been for most Americans a hidden history. And that was Ken Burns saying that.
Yeah.
That's a nice endorsement of the book. And I see that the foreword was written by Dave Winfield. And can you tell me who Bob Kendrick is? He was the one that wrote the afterword.
Okay, Bob Kendrick is the director, president of the Negro League Baseball Museum in Kansas City now, and he's been there. He's been working there for 30 years, I think. Long time.
I think I heard him on the radio advertising, something about having to do with the museum there. Yeah. He's
the chief of the Negro Leagues now, and my uncle Don, was the first director of the Negro League Baseball Museum.
Oh, okay.
He was the first.
No kidding.
President. Yeah, my uncle, my father's brother.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. So I've been involved in this Negro League Baseball Museum place a long time.
Well, I was going to say, no wonder your friend who told you were the one to do it. I mean, I agree with him. You had a lot of connection there and a long history.
Yeah.
So once again, I'll hold this book up, you guys. It's available. Is it okay to say it's available directly from you, Byron? Is that okay?
Sure, or online, anywhere. It's available everywhere. Absolutely.
It's available everywhere. Yeah. So you guys might want to think about that. It's really cool. It's a 100th anniversary edition, which means at the time it was written, it was the 100th anniversary of the league. Is that right?
Yeah, which is in 2020. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. And also a foreword in there by Miss Dionne Warwick as well.
Oh, she wrote a foreword too. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. How appropriate is that? That's amazing.
Yeah. She was happy to do it. I asked her. She said, "Oh, absolutely."
No hesitation.
She grew up. I didn't realize this until she told me that her father was a big baseball fan, a big fan of the Negro Leagues in Newark, New Jersey. So he was friends with a lot of those players that played with the Newark team, the Newark Eagles.
Okay.
So she said she didn't know much about the Negro Leagues herself, but her father was such a big fan that she she said, anything your father did for as far as the Negro Leagues are concerned, that's part of my father.
Oh,
she
okay.
said, so whatever you need for the Negro Leagues, I'd be happy to be a part of that, because it gave her a way to honor her father,
Yeah.
the memory of her father. So
Yeah.
and he was a big baseball fan. It seemed like everybody at that time, everybody was a big baseball fan and loved baseball. So baseball was the American national pastime,
Right.
and everybody loved baseball.
Well, we should point out, by the way, the Negro League grew up because African Americans weren't allowed to play in the majors, correct?
That's right. That's right.
the only reason they started in the first place.
Exactly.
So that's important to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Kansas City, in Kansas City at the YMCA of all places. They had a big meeting there of all these owners from around the country who got together and had this meeting and started the Negro Baseball Leagues in 1920.
1920. Wow, that's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Byron, looking ahead now, are you what projects are you working on now? Anything more in the documentary area having to do with the Negro Leagues? You're singing and performing. Is any more of those activities coming up? Can you tell us?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. The main project we're working on now is another Negro League-based project, which is about Effa Manley, who was the one of the owners of one of the teams.
A woman?
She was a woman. Yeah. She co-owned a team with her husband, Abe.
Okay.
And we're written a pilot episode for television that we're hoping getting casting soon for that. And it's a story, the life story about Effa Manley and her team.
Oh, wow. And so it'll be a series kind of a thing?
A series, yeah.
Okay.
A series, yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah, probably a 4-part, 8-part series, probably. I think like 8-part series.
Okay.
But yeah, what a life this woman lived. And she was a I used to say she was a white woman who lived as a black woman, because I thought for years she was white. Everybody thought she was white. But she ended up being part black. She was mulatto.
Oh, okay. So if you were to look at her, she's very fair. You would maybe assume.
Very fair. You would assume she's white. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you would assume that. And I argued that point.
As my father used to always tell me that at the time, and this goes back probably to the early 70s, late 60s, he would say that he read some article that said there's at least 20 million white Americans who don't realize they have some African American blood in them.
Yeah, yeah. I was at the Baseball Hall of Fame for the event when Effa was honored and put into the baseball. She's the only woman ever to be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown.
Oh, really?
First woman only ever. And probably ever will be. I can't think of another woman who will get in there. But this is in 2006. And at lunch one day, I was sitting this little restaurant, and a guy came in, older gentleman, and his family, and it was Effa's brother-in-law, who was Abe Manley's brother, who was Effa's husband, who had passed on years before, as well as Effa passed on the years before. But I was sitting there having lunch, kind of like with Hank Aaron, almost at the same table.
Oh, okay.
And I asked him, I think I said something about Effa being. I said, what was it like for her to be a white woman in black baseball? He said, that woman wasn't white. I said, what? He says, no, she was black. Huh. And I said, no, she wasn't. He said, and this man is like 90 something. He said, I'm telling you what I know. She was white. And I didn't believe him.
Oh, okay.
I didn't believe him until I verified it. I verified it when I saw a picture of her mother. I went,
okay.
Okay.
Clearly, yeah, okay.
Clearly. And her mother's very fair-skinned. But there was something about her mother. There's something I just knew. It's like, oh wow. And I've been telling people for years, and everybody's been saying for years she was this white woman that played, and this white woman in black baseball. First it's a woman in baseball and a white woman in baseball. Yeah, but no, she apparently her father, she says her father was white and her mother was white. She also said her mother told her she was white.
I see.
Yeah.
And we should point out, by the way, there was a lot of passing going on too, right? I mean, light-skinned blacks who knew that he had African American history, but they claimed not to.
Yeah. But so that's a passion project we're working on, and hopefully we'll get that started and going
Good
soon.
luck with that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And what about music-wise? Are you performing anymore, or?
Yeah, I'm writing still. Been writing some songs. Performing with Corky next month.
No way.
We're doing something at Catalina Bar and Grill again. Not Catalina Bar and Grill. Yeah, Catalina Bar and Grill.
Where is that?
That's in Hollywood.
Hollywood. So once again, can you tell our audience what is it called again? The club you guys are going to be playing at?
The Catalina Bar and Grill.
Oh, Catalina Bar and Grill. Oh, I know that one.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
And that's on, I think it's the day before, the 13th of February. February 13th, yeah.
February 13th, fantastic.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that, and who knows what else I'll think of doing.
Something may pop up, right? But
I always think of something always pops up. Yeah,
fantastic.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if you were to say, going back to the Negro Baseball League, there was maybe something you wanted the audience to take away from knowing about the Negro Baseball League. Is there anything that you would say to them that I'd like for you to make sure you get from this whole thing? Knowledge of the history of the Negro Baseball League?
Yeah, I think it's really to learn more about the history. I mean, see the documentary, but don't let that tell you the full story. There's so much more information from this, about this history, and it's American.
Don't
history.
Stop there, exactly.
Don't stop there.
Yeah.
Because there's and let your kids know.
Yeah.
Because let the kids know to learn about this history.
Sure.
Because it's American history, and this history ain't going nowhere. And it's up to all of us, really, now to keep the history and the memory alive.
And we thank you, by the way, for doing that. Putting together this 20-some odd years of putting together this documentary, authoring with your dad this book, and all the things that you've done to help everyone understand what was happening back in the 20s and 30s and 40s and so on. We owe a debt of gratitude. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. But yeah, just keep the memory of the Negro Leagues alive. And like I said, make sure your kids know about it and their kids. Yeah. So that this memory, this history never goes away.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Some great stories. I mean, that's why I got somebody like Maya Angelou saying, they call it the leagues. Yeah. I mean, who knew that other than her?
Right.
I mean, if I hadn't interviewed her, none of us would know that story.
Right.
And there's so many other great stories that came out of these, that these men and women were a part of this history and were helped create, or they saw it, or they learned about it as kids growing up, and were around to tell about it. So I think that's important to honor their contributions to our planet and our world.
Yeah. And one other thing I just wanted to highlight too, I think you might have mentioned this earlier, but these guys and three women, as you mentioned, really played. They loved the game. They weren't basically getting wealthy by playing. They were actually playing because they loved the game.
Love the game.
And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. As common as that line, people say, for the love of the game. No, these people really play for the passion of it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, which is amazing. Yeah.
Well, Byron, I want to say thank you so much for sharing your perspective and telling us all about the various projects you have worked on and are currently working on. We look forward to hearing you perform at the Catalina Bar and Grill with Corky and seeing this series. Hopefully, we're wishing you all the best on that. Thank you. Again, thanks a lot for sharing your perspective.
Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure.
And everyone out there, thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much.